Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you for sharing space with me this morning. My name's Carly Stong, and I am recording from my practice space and office here in Kingston, Ontario, Canada. So today's a gentle yoga session. All that you'll need is a blanket, and my intention is to empower you to have just to have an experience so you can really let go of any sort of expectations or judgments and enjoy the class. So we're going to start today laying down on our mats with the knees bent and feet on the mat. And the reason why I like to start classes, especially gentle yoga classes, in that way is it's a really nice way to unwind from time seated in a chair. Let me get this out of the way. It's a really nice way to unwind from time sitting in a chair. So it's a nice way to use gravity in our favor. And I'm going to go ahead and use a blanket behind my head. You can experiment with whether or not you'd like to do the same. There's no right or wrong way to use props when you come to lie on your back. The intention is just to be as comfortable as possible. So I'll put the blanket just behind my head and my neck for a little bit of support, but my shoulders are still flat on the ground. It's most comfortable for me, and I'd say probably like for most people, to have knees bent and feet to the mat, but that's you can try that and see how it feels compared to legs out straight. Also, for people who don't have any issues with sciatica or it doesn't irritate your back to do so, you can bring your knees to drop towards each other and walk your feet a little further apart. Taking a few breaths where you are. And then see if you can send just a little more breath into the back of your body. And now see if you can send a little more breath into your side ribs. And without too much effort or strain, see if you could do both at the same time, sending breath into your side ribs and into the back of the body. Now interlace the fingers behind your head and take a couple of breaths, keeping your rib cage and your spine drawn down towards the floor. Take a couple of breaths with the elbows open. And instead of thinking of dropping the elbows closer to the floor, interlace the fingers tightly behind your head and see if you can pull a little bit, like your elbows are reaching further away from each other. And as you do that, intend that your spine is heavier. So you're kind of dropping down towards the floor. Anytime that we're working with a bit of a stretch sensation or strengthening, we're always seeking to be at about 6 out of 10 in terms of efforts. So nothing too intense, so that nothing too intense that might encourage the fight flight nervous system to activate. And now sliding your hands out from behind your head, take your elbows if you can and bring them flat to the ground so that your hands are pointing straight up towards the ceiling. So if this feels too intense to have the elbows straight out beside you, you can slide them down just a little bit towards your waist. And after a few breaths, see if they can move up a little bit, no higher than your shoulders. So we're working to have elbows straight line from your shoulders, and your arms are kind of in two right angles or two 90-degree angles. Now, keeping your arms engaged in this way, you could have your fingers straight or into a fist. You're going to take your left palm and rotate so that your arm moves down towards the floor. So your palm is touching towards the floor. And then do the same with your right. And then left palm up to where we started and right up. And we're just going to do that a few times. And going backwards, so you may or may not touch the ground. So moving back, back, back up, back up, back, back. And now we're going to see if we can do the opposite. So let's see if we can do left palm down, right palm up. And then switch. Do that for just a couple more times. And then we're going to transition to hands and knees. So take your time, gently roll yourself over towards your hands and knees and set yourself up however feels comfortable. Now, if hands and knees doesn't feel comfortable for you for whatever reason today, you're also more than welcome to bring your hands straight out in front of you onto the wall. That's always a nice option. So I'm going to set myself up in a position where my seat is a little bit closer towards my feet. That just takes a little bit of strain or pressure off of my wrists. Slide the shoulders back towards each other and away from each other. Slide the shoulders towards each other and away from each other. Towards each other and away from each other. So as you do that, we're trying to do so without moving the spine too much. And then we'll come up to a seated shape now. So you can simply sit back towards your seat, like sitting on your knees if you want, or sitting flat on your bum, and just start big shoulder circles. Up, back, down and around. Up, back, down and around. And we'll do that a couple more times. And I encourage you to go very slowly so that you can really take advantage of all the directions. Up, back, down and around. And then we'll change directions so we're going forward. Same thing. You want to really try to find 4 directions of movement. Now we're going to try to move in 2 directions at the same time. So the left shoulder is going to go forward and the right shoulder is going to go back. And that is a little bit trickier. Ooh, it's kind of like tapping your head and rubbing your belly at the same time. And then see if you can do the opposite. So now your right shoulder is going to go forward and your left shoulder is going to go back. Let's move this chair over. Sure. And then we're going to transition to a seated shape. So I'm going to use my blanket to help support me seated here. Oh, and I'm going to sit for a moment with my feet together and my knees open. So feet together and knees open isn't the easiest position to sit in. So as you bring yourself to sit, try to bring yourself up onto a blanket so your bum is way up higher than your knees. With your feet together, your heels don't have to be too close to your body. And try then to pull back on the fleshy bits of your seat so you're sitting really high up onto the bones. Keep your spine in neutral. And then from a neutral spine, you're going to hinge yourself forward. So the key here is to keep your spine really strong or your back really strong so that you can keep yourself from curving your spine. And all of the work happens where your hip leg plugs into your hip socket. So you're just going to hinge. If it helps, you could give a little pull to your legs or bring the hands behind you and push just a little bit. Hinge while you breathe. Now we're going to hold into that hinge for a few breaths, breathing into your rib cage, breathing into your back. Coming back up to a tall seated shape now. Bring your legs however they feel comfortable. Maybe they're crossed, maybe your feet are together, your knees are open, maybe your legs are extended straight out ahead of you, whatever is most comfortable for you. The most important here is that your spine is in a relatively straight line. So you want to have yourself sitting up high enough that your hips are higher than your knees. And then you want to bring your legs to some place that feels comfortable, that's comfortable enough that your spine can be straight. Now imagine that you're sitting back on a wall so that the back of the head is touching the wall. Behind you, the back of the shoulders are touching the wall, and your tail is touching the wall. Take an inhale breath. And as you exhale, take your right hand over to the side and your left arm up and over. So you get a big stretch on your left side. And then come back to center on your inhale and switch on your exhale. Inhale up to center. We're going to go back and forth in this way. Feel free to take a couple of breaths per side. The next time you're hinging over towards your left, so next time your right arm is up, we're going to stay here for a moment. Really reach that right arm and ground down with your right hip. So it's almost like you're moving in two directions at the same time. Readjust and realign if you need to so that you're really feeling like you're still attached to that wall behind you. And see if you can still breathe into the belly and into the side of your body. Take a breath to come back to center and just pause for a moment to notice how you feel on your right side compared to your left side. Inhaling when you're ready, we'll take the arms to a T shape once again. And as you exhale, hinging over the opposite way. So remember, as I'm reaching with my left arm, I'm grounding down with my left hip. So in essence, feeling as though I'm moving in these two directions. While you're in that space, feeling like you're connected to the wall behind you, the imaginary wall behind you, and taking breaths into your ribs, into your back. And then come on back to center, check in with how you're feeling here. We'll make a couple more little shoulder circles, just back this time, up, around, back, and down. Up, around, back, and down. And then take your right hand and put it either behind your back or lean over, and you can actually kind of sit down onto your flat palm. From there, take your left ear over towards your left shoulder. And with this tilt in your head, gently look up to the corner where the wall meets the ceiling, and then look down towards your left hand or your left knee. Look up to where the wall meets the ceiling in the corner, and look down towards your left knee. And then back to just the side hinge. And coming back towards center. Now shifting off of that hand or taking it out from behind your back, we're going to take the left hand behind your back, or you can lean over and kind of sit down onto your left flat palm and take your right ear to your right shoulder. And then look up to where the wall meets the ceiling in the corner. And down to your right knee. Up to where the wall meets the ceiling. Down to your right knee. We'll do that just a couple more times. And then back to your side hinge. And sliding off of your hand, coming back to center, or moving your hand from behind your back, coming back to center. And then taking a moment or two to find breath. So now we're seated, which is a different relationship to gravity than when we were on the ground. So I encourage you to find the same breath that you found when we were lying on the ground. So you're breathing into the side ribs, breathing into the back of your body. We're going to come back to hands and knees when you get a moment. And this time we're going to find more stability in hands and knees. So imagine like there's a secondary source of gravity pulling you upwards towards the ceiling. Try to find 25% of your weight on your full left palm, so out towards the fingers as well as your wrists, and then your full right palm out towards the fingers as well as the wrist. And then your left leg from the knee down to the toes, and your right leg. So bring a little bit more awareness to the pinky toe side of your legs, or of your feet rather, so that your whole foot is engaged in this process. Now take an inhale to extend your left leg behind you. See if you can lift that left leg off the floor, but if that causes low back to feel a little strained, you can keep it down to the floor and pushing back. You can also float up and down. Be conscious here that you're not leaning over to the right as your left leg finds a little bit of movement. Make sure you're still breathing, and the effort is only about a 6 out of 10. And then we're going to switch to the other side. So with as little lean as possible to the left, we're going to start to move the right leg up and down, or just keep it extended behind you. Make sure you're still breathing here. And then come back to table. Feel free to give yourself a little break off of your wrists for a breath or two. The more engagement that you can find through the core of your body, the more or the less we're going to find strain in the wrists. So feeling as though the ceiling has gravity that's pulling you slightly upwards. Let's take the left leg now and extend it out. This time, without hinging your hip to the right, you're going to cross your left leg over to tap it down on the outer edge of your right side. And then over to tap it to the left, to the right, to the left, with as little shift to the right with your body as possible. And then we're going to switch. So take a breath if you need to in the center. Extend your right leg out. Without hinging over to the left with your hip, we're going to take the cross and extend it out. Cross and extend. Couple more times like this. And then come back to center and imagine like you could draw circles on the wall behind you with your seat. So you're going to just circle in one direction, try to free up that lumbar spine, and then circle the other direction. And then we're going to do the same thing with these circles, but from a seated shape. So find yourself seated once again. And again, if you want to do these, you could even do them sitting down in a chair. The important part here is that your hips are higher than your knees so that you can find enough mobility through the hips to move and free up your lumbar spine. So just using the very lowest part of your body down into the sacrum, we're going to tip way forward. If you imagine like your pelvis is filled with water, here the water would be dumping forward. And then tuck back like the water is spilling backwards. Forward and back. And again, although the rest of the spine might be experiencing some movement while you do this, the effort or the bulk of the movement is happening down in your lumbar spine, forward and back. And then, just like we were when we were on hands and knees, you're going to try to make big circles. So I'm going forward to the very apex front of my pubis. Over, I can feel more of my weight shifting to my right sitting bone. As I tuck my tail ever so slightly, I'm shifting towards my tailbone and then over towards the left sitting bone. You can imagine like you're running the bases in baseball and you have to go from home to first to second to third. And then we're going to change directions. So once you change directions, you're moving like through time instead of moving through the bases. Now you're moving from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock and so on. And really be conscious that the effort, it's very easy to keep your hips still and make these circles with your rib cage. And that's not quite the same as trying to keep your rib cage still and making the efforts with your hips. Whether you are quite active throughout the week or you're rather sedentary, the hips take a lot of wear and tear and of strain in both of those efforts. So let's come back to central now. So if you want to, you can shift a little forward and back, a little through your bases, a little through time, and find what feels like a center place for you. Try to arrange your spine in space so that it feels like your spine is floating on top of your hips. And then try to arrange your neck in space so that it feels like your neck is floating on top of your spine. Now, lots of us have been spending more and more time on the computer screen, which is keeping us in touch with the people that we care about, keeping us connected to our studies, and causing more work for our eyes and the muscles behind the eyes than they were previously doing. So we're going to transition to the back now and do a couple of movements or exercises or practices that are specifically designed with that in mind. So make yourself comfortable on your back. Or if you're more comfortable sitting in your chair or sitting against the wall, you could also be lying on your side or your stomach. It doesn't really matter. You don't actually have to be on your back. Just finding comfortable position to rest your body in. And then in front of you, visualize the face of a clock. You could have your eyes open or your eyes closed here, but make the clock so big that what you're actually looking at, if you visualize this in your mind's eye, is the center part of the clock, like the part where the arms of the clock connect in that center point. That's what you're looking at. And the hours are outside the hours are outside of your, or just to the edges of your peripheral vision. The numbers are just to the edges of your peripheral vision. And then look straight up to 12 o'clock. So 12 o'clock is like to the wall behind you. So you're not just going to look up a little bit, you're going to bring your eyeballs as far back into your skull, up and back into your skull as you can, to try to find 12 o'clock. And then slightly over, but still pulling way back into your skull for 1 o'clock. And then slightly over for 2. And then as far to the right as your eyeballs will turn without turning your head, to 3 o'clock. Down slightly to 4, 5, straight down like you're trying to peer into your own cheekbones at 6 o'clock. 7, over to 8. As far to the left as your eyeballs will go for 9 o'clock. 10, 11, and then way straight up to 12. And then you're going to go in reverse. It's kind of cool to do with your eyes open, but it also kind of makes me a little dizzy. Once you're done, we're going to take the hands and rub them together to create some heat. Rub, 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 rub. Push them together while you rub, 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 rub. Keep rubbing them for just a moment, and then when I tell you to do so, or whenever you feel like it, really, but keep rubbing them. We're going to make them into cups so that they could actually hold water, like real true cups. So when you place them, we're going to place them in a moment over the eyes without actually pressing down onto your eyes. So go ahead, place the heels of your hands on the tops of your cheek. Make these little cups so that the fingertips are holding the most amount of pressure. The pinky fingers maybe come together at your third eye or the space above the bridge of your nose, creating a little bit of warmth for your eyes, like a blanket of comfort. And if they're not already, keeping your hands here and let your eyes close. If eyes closed doesn't feel comfortable for you, you could look down to the tops of your cheeks or just start to blur your vision. Once the hands cool down or the arms get tired or the face starts to get too warm, then you can go ahead and choose to let your arms fall to the sides or wherever they're comfortable. And we'll move into our integration component of the practice. So as we move into the integration component of the practice, finding yourself as physically comfortable as possible. Finding a single point of focus to rest your attention to. Maybe it's the breath. Maybe it's another sensation in your body. Maybe it's a repetition of words. Whatever your mind focuses upon, allow these next few minutes to be a practice of concentration. Choosing to set aside all of the other things that could be taking your attention at this moment and instead focusing on whatever you choose to bring your mind's attention to in this moment. Anytime your attention is taken away to something different, bringing it back to this point of focus. Taking a breath where you are and starting to move your body slowly. Eventually rolling over to one side or changing the position that you're in. And then gradually coming up to sit. Once you're sitting, take a moment here to recognize a word of gratitude to yourself for making time for your practice. Gratitude to the people who shared the space with you, the people upon whose land we're practicing, the people who brought us this practice. And I want to thank all of you for joining me in practice this morning. I hope to see you again next week and have a great rest of your weekend.